Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We will now do the committee of the whole. Welcome the additional staff members that will be helping council through the budget process. So I look and I still have quorum. No one has decided to go home early. So this meeting is going to come to order. After looking at the agenda, do any councilors have any comments on the agenda? Not seeing any. Then put forward by Councillor Stewart that the agenda for the February 4th, 2019 regular meeting of committee be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? All opposed? Okey-doke. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. After looking the agenda over, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest or general nature thereof to declare? And I see none. Please note that, Madam Clerk. Department reports. 4.1 Community Planning and Development. Recommendation report regarding an application for zoning bylaw amendment part 13, Plan 59R-16039, file number AM-13-18. A motion brought forward by Councillor Wink. The Committee of the Whole received this Department of Community Planning and Development report for information as it pertains to file number A1-13-18 regarding Part 13, Plan 59R-16039, and that committee recommend that council consider the bylaw attached hereto as Appendix B, amending the zoning of Part 13, Plan 59R-16039 at the next regular council meeting. Any debate on this? Seeing none, I call the motion All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councilor Hildebrand, that Committee of the Whole receive the Community Planning and Development Report December 2018 and January 2019 report for information. Discussion on this report. Okay. All those in favor of the motion? And all those opposed? Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councillor Trophy. The Committee of the Whole received the Fire and Bylaw Services November, December 2018 and January 2019 report for information. Any comment on the Chief's report? Okay, seeing none. Call the motion. All those in favor? All those against? Motion carries. Public Works, motion put forward by Councillor Corr. The Committee of the Whole received the Public Works and Utilities November, December 2018 and January 2019 report for information. Any discussion on Public Works report? Councillor Corr.
Yes, in your report it says daily maintenance is required in many areas, and it talks about floors and paint touch-ups and drywalls. Why is the drywall needs to be repaired? The kids using a puck and putting it through the drywall, or?
Yes,
Director?
yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. With any facility, when you have children running around in the facility, you're going to have maintenance issues, puck marks, some stick marks. These are normal of a facility of this type, and it will be an ongoing maintenance service that we'll need to provide to that facility to make it, keep it in tip-top shape the way we want to have it presented.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, would the people that caused the damage, would they be paying for it? Or like if the hockey team got a little rowdy or in the dressing rooms, or would they, are we holding a deposit on that?
Through you again, Mr. Mayor. If there are circumstances where there is damage to the facility and we can prove that a specific user group is responsible for that, then we will look after receiving retribution from them on that. As you can appreciate, a lot of what you see, what you can't see, especially inside of change rooms, is very difficult. But we do keep track of teams that are in the rooms and do inspections before and after whenever possible to make sure we can keep on track of any damage and who's responsible for that.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on the same subject, talking to your maintenance people, it sounds as though they're daily repairing the drywall up around the track. Has the town got any plan to do something about it? Because it seems as though drywall around that track isn't a very feasible solution.
Through you again, Mr. Mayor. I'm not familiar with anything we're doing exactly at the moment. I believe we are looking into a covering that can go over top of the drywall in the areas where they're high impact areas. That'll help protect those that drywall and prevent damage to those walls in the facility. So.
Thank you. Council?
Further on to another subject, you've got a facilities rental report in this area. And basically, when I'm looking at the MCC and the two arenas, you're coming up with an average rental of $2,400, 24 hours. Oh, sorry, 600 hours a month on average, and for 4 months, that's about $2,400, 2,400 hours. But the thing is, what we don't see is, you can give me all the usage numbers we want, but what I don't see is the rental revenue from those, because it depends. Are we making $100 per hour off of that, $200, or $10 an hour? That's the kind of information I prefer to see on something like that.
Thank you. Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Obviously, those numbers aren't in front of me right now. I can't comment on that.
Right.
We'd be more than happy to share that, what the revenue intake would be for those hours that we rent the facility. Obviously, there's different rates for different types of use, whether it's an arena or whether it's a room rental. So definitely we could look at putting that into future reports.
Thank you.
Yep.
Comment on that or no?
Yeah, it's just through you, Mr. Mayor. When we bring the operating budget on March the 4th, we are going to be doing a separate analysis on the Meridian Community Center. So you'll see the usage and the dollars that way.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilor Cora?
Just with Mr. Hildebrand, or Councilor Hildebrand, what's internal, external? What does that mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The internal rental is, that would be internal rent from the municipality itself. So those would not be billable hours. And the external is the external user groups that are renting the facility, which would be billable.
Okay. Any other questions on the report?
One
Oh,
other question, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Do we know what our percentage of usage? I just worked it out. And I would mention with Councilor Hildebrand, there's 229 hours used in December, and there's 148 hours with the two arenas, and it comes down to 42% of the time we rent that. And I know we can't rent 24 hours, so if we go back to 16 hours per day, that's 992 hours at 63% usage of that arena. And now you're telling me that internal and internal we don't pay at all for usage?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
So basically, we only, if my math is right, is 523 hours. We charge people for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. I was just looking at December, that's all.
Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm recommending that we come back with further information regarding these usage reports for council to consider, which would include financial, the financial side of things as well.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, when we brought the Meridian Community Center budget last year for 2018, we said that the first 6 months is a pilot to see, how we're operating the MCC. So part of the operating budget for 2019, we're going to report back to council on how we did with the pilot and, how it compares to the pro forma. And we'll look at all of the usage and be able to answer those questions more in depth. We'll
So
have a
through
separate
you,
report.
Mr. Mayor. So we're gonna have a separate
Yes.
report, usage, internal, external, what our,
Yep.
dollar value is, and what the total revenue, would that be with the basketball?
Everything.
Rent, everything?
Yeah.
So halls, basketball,
All
what junior
facility,
B's paying, like all that?
Yes, we can break it all out, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fairly important that we see
Yeah.
that on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman.
He answered the question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hildebrand.
Progressing further along, I see in the engineering part of it, we've got a Sulphur Springs rehabilitation that staff's reviewed a report with regards to this area. I just want to comment, I cycle through there all the time, and really, there doesn't seem to be any road bank. There seems to almost be a single lane that I cycle down through there. I'd be interested in seeing this report when it's finalized, so the council has a chance to review that before we proceed with the budget.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a report that's been completed by a consulting firm. It's a feasibility study and a preliminary design report, which looked at different options on what rehabilitation strategies could be put in place for this area. Actually, it's part of my budget presentation as well, this particular project. There's 2 failure areas. And once that report's finalized, we will be bringing that to council for endorsement on which repair strategy that we're recommending to put forward. So that will be coming as part of a further report to council.
Any other questions? No. So, Director, I do have some questions also about the Sulphur Springs, but I'm going to wait till we get into the budget debate, and then I'll ask them there. Thank you. Any more questions on this? Public Works? Okay, great. Call the motion. All those in favor? Okay, all opposed? Motion carries. Back with my glasses. Motion from Councilor Trophy that Committee of the Whole receive the Recreation, Culture, and Wellness November, December 2018, and January 2019 report for information. Any members of council wish to make comments? Yes, Councilor Court.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the director, pickleball and volleyball, is that inside the MCC of 10,260, or is that the court at the old arena?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, that's inside the MCC, that's usage of the gymnasium.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we get all these numbers together so it's not in 3 or 4 different reports? And I think we mentioned it earlier in our discussions. This way we have a better idea what our profit and losses are with that community center.
Yes, Ms. CAO?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's no problem.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the wellness report? Councilman Trophy?
Yeah, I'm just not sure. Lunches, what does that one mean?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we provide lunches for camps
Okay.
in which they're paid for by the participant.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay, not seeing any other questions. Call the motion. All those in favor? Okay, any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Motion put forward by Councilor Kaur that Committee of the Whole receive the Clerk's Department November, December 2018 and January 2019 report for information. Any questions on this report? Yes, Councilor Hildebrand.
Yes, I notice under projects, there's a website audit. Could staff enlighten me what exactly that is?
Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start, and then perhaps our communications, public relations can elaborate if I miss anything. We are conducting an audit on what's working, what needs improvements, what our gaps are in terms of our municipal website, and we will be initiating some new works there in terms of internal processes and how we might improve the website. Mr. McDonald might have something further.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as per the clerk, basically what we're doing is we will be going through all of our current web pages to see if there's any gaps, if there's broken links, photos that are missing, outdated information, compiling all of that, created a master list of all those pages. We'll include notes, identify the appropriate admins in the various departments who are responsible for updating those pages. And as we begin to develop, stronger content and more up-to-date content, we'll start to repackage that a little bit in a format that is a little bit easier to navigate on the website.
Thank you. Councilman Hahn.
Through
Councilor
you,
Hahn.
you, Mr. Mayor. What's the time frame on that?
We are looking, trying to develop a bit of a different look and feel, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to see what types of templates might work best, how things are best laid out. We hope to have something internally within the next couple weeks to a month, and certainly with the web pages themselves, that's going to take a little bit of time because there's roughly 260, I believe, that we'll have to go through and check. Like I said, all the links, photos, things like that.
Thank you. Oh, wait, I'll just, Councilor Hahn? Oh, are you
Well,
okay?
yeah, but just further to that, I guess, as I go on there, there's some obviously broken links, but there's also things where there's information about going to Christmas functions. That ship kind of sailed. So I think if we could just pull those out as we see them, as opposed to, I realize you have to generate a list and so on and so forth, but is it a laborious task to pull out information that's clearly dated? Or there's some other things that I noticed on there that I kind of did an eye roll wondering why it was still on there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're referring to what's on the kind of the news page and the updates page,
Yeah.
those things stay there permanently, and they just get cycled down as new information is uploaded. So anything that's on the main rotating banner on the landing page, that information gets pulled as soon as it becomes outdated. The news, press releases, things of that nature does stay on until it kind of gets pushed down through new content.
So further to that, are you doing a jurisdictional search then as well? So are we looking at other municipalities? Because there's some other municipalities that have fantastic web pages. They're very intuitive, easy peasy, can find exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, we'll be
You-
reviewing other
all those?
municipalities that also use the same website provider that we do, so that we're aware of what capabilities our current provider has for us as they relate to other municipality websites.
Madam CEO?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So we met with communications and our IT manager who supports the back end of the website. And we talked about, it's time to refresh it. The good news is that we don't have to get a new website provider. So the changes that we're looking at to make it more user-friendly and easy to navigate is doable with the platform that we have. So we're going to save money there, not having to go out and get that. So the team's on it. We know we're definitely looking at different municipalities to see, what is their look and feel, and how do we, what are people looking for? And so we'll definitely bring back to council. This is an important project for us.
Okay, Thank you. I think the neighborhood is looking forward to a rebuild of that website. I have heard a lot of non-complimentary things about it. So it is ready for a rebuild.
Yeah.
Excellent. Looking forward to that, Mr. McDonald. Oh, Councilman Hildebrand.
Still on the website, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's one request I have. Daily, I'm sending out a template email regarding the PSR, so people know where to find it. No one can find it. I'm getting complaints all the time. I have to go through the process, so I've developed my own template. This is how you do it. This is where you go, and all this kind of stuff. If that could be on the front page, that would be a great saving for all the residents, as well as myself, my time.
Certainly through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely, we can get some information about the PSR system up on the main landing page this week.
Great, thank you.
So
Councilman Lee?
through you, Mr. Mayor, just on the same issue, I don't think a lot of our residents know about the PSR system. Number one, it's great that it would be up front on the web page, but it also might be worthwhile putting an article in The Voice on the fact that we do have a PSR system and how to utilize it and when to utilize it. It might make everyone's life a lot easier.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Councilor. Yes, Councilor Hildebrand.
Continuing on, there's an article here on record, through you, Mr. Mayor, on records management. And I see that we're storing stuff. And I know that storage is a very expensive option, and I presume these records have to be kept forever. Is there any plans being developed to offset that or provide another option?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer this to the clerk, who's responsible for records management.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the records management is not, everything is permanent. Everything is categorized under the Ontario Records Management System. And this is a system used by many municipalities across the province of Ontario. So records, we were running out of room, as you can see from the photographs on site. So many of the records have now been moved to a unit down on Highway 20, Safe Store. It's very, very cost effective in, I think it's, what, $1,200 a year or something like that. The records do have to be maintained for a certain period of time. Once they reach that life cycle end, we will be going through the annual purging of those records. There has to be a system in place for that. But we certainly have made great strides in cleaning up the office areas of the records that are not active any longer, and it is part of a legislated requirement for records management.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor, good? Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Not seeing any, I call the motion. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Motion put forward by Councilor Hildebrand that Committee of the Whole receive the Corporate Services November, December 2018 and January 2019 report for information. Questions or comments on this report? Okay, calling the, sorry, Councilor Court.
The termination of 15 employees, how many employees are employed by the town of Pelham?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we currently have 63 full-time employees.
So working on percentage, that 18 is not the right answer. It's 25%, if I'm not mistaken, if you did the 15 into that. Because I did work that out, and I knew the number. If that number for 18 would mean there would have been 80 employees working at 18%. So I just,
Okay, yeah, and I'll
okay,
review that.
it just,
Thank you.
it just didn't make sense. And 25 is a lot different than 18, so that's 1/4 of our staff moving on somewhere else. And I think we might have some issues with that.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we will be bringing forward a human resources presentation to council. and then we can get into more detail of those questions. This also includes part-time staff as well. I think it does. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarity. Yes,
So
Councilor
through
Lee?
you, Mr. Mayor, you indicated a number of new hires. Were those new hires replacing people who left, or these brand-new positions that we've created?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what we have here, most of these hires here are vacancies that we had, except for one, Adam. He is an intern student from Niagara College, and he is not on the payroll. He's just here to do an assignment. So the rest of them are all vacancies.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Court?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's a bid at 2018 BW17, and it's got CRL Campbell Construction and Drainage Limited, and it's got 29,286. Part A, only 19,529. I just didn't understand. Is that the total contract of 29,260, and we're only going to pay him for Part A?
Yeah, so
Of 19?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, sometimes when the RFPs go out, they go out in different components, different parts, and just to get prices on different, the scope of the project. And so depending on what the prices that come back or the amount of work that we want, so out of the total amount that was quoted, we decided only to do the Part A of that, and that's why that's the value of that. So there could have been a Part A, B, and C, and we decided that only the work of Part A was getting done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, it just seems cheap. You know, you got some contractors at 75,000, 55, 47. Is this company going to do what we ask, or are they cheating or doing the bare minimum, and then we might have to go back and redo it again? I just find that it's, you know, usually on a bid, it would be close, but he's not even close to any other bids.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer this to the Director of Public Works with regards to, well, first of all, before I do, so we do have, as part of the procurement process, we have an evaluation criteria, and there's different components in the criteria, and part of that is reference checking. So we do references on our vendors to make sure that they have a good reputation, and there's also other categories that we look at. So in order for us to have awarded that contract, we would have had the confidence that the company would do a good job. So I'm just going to defer this to the Director of Public Works if he wants to add anything else to that.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, looking at the values for the tender, the company that was awarded the work is a very reputable firm. They do quality work, and they have a very good reputation in the industry. If there was a huge bid discrepancy, we would look at that and have concerns and considerations to that effect, but I've worked with this firm personally in the past as well, and on many projects, and they're very qualified to do the work. And it's sometimes some of these smaller jobs as well. The smaller contractors will be more competitive on those, and some of the bigger contractors that price the bigger work, they don't have quite a competitive advantage that some of the smaller guys would have on that scope of work as well. So that could be also some of the reason for the variability in the bid pricing.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, and I'm talking about bid 2018 CS 18, and again, we took the lowest bid at 16,700, and I could obviously see why we took it, because it was the cheapest. I always learn that if cheapest doesn't mean the best. That's all. I get scared when we take the lowest bid all the time, and are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And I'm not an expert on that. I'm just noticing that, that's all.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned, price is only one component of the evaluation process. And I know that when we went out for the strategic planning consultant, the mayor and the deputy mayor were part of that review process. So I think that you had an appreciation to see how the criteria worked in the different categories that we look at before we can award a contract. And definitely reference checking is an important component of that.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, one more bill bidding, CS 19. We as a council has only seen 2 bids, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bids, and we only were given 2 presentations. There's a reason why?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Mayor. So part of the evaluation process was, we went through and we evaluated all of the different companies. So the evaluation team consisted of myself as the treasurer, the former CAO, the deputy treasurer, Lisa, and the mayor. So the 4 of us sat down, we evaluated all of them. There was a score that each one, based on the categories, received, and then we took the top 2 scores, and that's why council only saw the top 2 presentations. If we would have seen all of them, some of the, first of all, some of the firms there didn't even meet a certain number criteria, and also it would have taken a lot of time for council to sit through 6 presentations. So the 2 that we brought forward, and that they were very close in the point, in the evaluation points. So I don't know if Councillor Hahn or the mayor want to add to that evaluation process.
That was the first evaluation that I'd ever sat through, and yeah, I was quite impressed. Points for, and I obviously forget the categories, points for this, then you add the points up, and then whoever has the most points becomes a favorite, whoever has the second number points, and like I say, there's so many different categories. At the end of the process, I was more than happy with who we had chosen. Yes, Councillor Hahn?
Sure, I can add to that, Mr. Mayor. So in addition, for points being awarded, and I've done this many times before, so you're looking at things like, who else have they worked for in the past? What do their samples or some of their work look like? Is it in line with the vision that we have? Have they done work for municipalities before, or have they never done work with municipalities at all, and they've only ever been just in private sector? What's their balance? What does it look like? So when you add up those scores, we selected the top 2 to have a presentation, and then we made our decision from the presentation that we all saw. So I believe it to be a very fair process. I'm happy with the way that we went about doing it. I think that if you, and if you'd like, I'm sure we can dig up those scores if anybody wants to review them, and the paperwork that was submitted. I mean, that's all fair game. So if anybody wants to see that, I'm sure it's available. But I believe you would trust in the mayor and deputy mayor. I think we made a good choice, the top 2 anyhow.
Councillor Carr, any other comments?
Well, one other question about meetings. When we're conducting a meeting here, and it just gives you a brief outline, and I know there was a meeting with CanTrust, and I don't see it on this list.
It's through you, Mr. Mayor. This is for corporate services. I wasn't part of that meeting.
No, I understand.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm just saying-
I fully understand that.
And I'm saying that's why it's not
It's just
here.
moving forward. There was 1 or 2 meetings that were conducted, and I don't see any of those meetings on the meeting list here. And I know you guys can't answer it because the previous CEO is not here to answer it. So I just think moving forward that we should get an accurate indication of who's having meetings and what day they're having meetings. Maybe I'm wrong, but it would be more
Well, if I can
informative.
answer that somewhat, I have checked with other municipalities about what meetings should be brought to council's attention and what meetings not shouldn't, but don't have to be. And it's strictly an administrative work meeting, which is what this was. They came in and with the appropriate staff went through road traffic patterns and what have you. And that doesn't necessarily qualify as a meeting that usually is given to council. And like I say, I've checked that with other municipalities, and that's, go ahead.
I can see something like that, but there's been a couple of meetings, to my knowledge, too, that they've been of significant nature, and we weren't aware of it. One was with the CanTrust and one with Leviathan. So I would just, speaking on behalf of myself, I would like to know ahead of time, other than finding out from the media.
Well, Number one, it depends on what you call significant meetings, as opposed to a routine meeting. And I can assure you that the meeting with CanTrust, everything that was involved in that meeting on the Friday was revealed to council at an in-camera meeting. Sooner or later, the council either has to trust myself and staff that we will keep you informed as these discussions move forward, but as opposed to whether you're right at the first meeting or not, like I said, I honestly don't think that those meetings are for council. They're staff working meetings. You guys, when it gets to the next level, and decisions have to be made, that's when council's informed. Myself, I've been on both sides. I was a counselor. I'm a mayor now, and yeah, I think as long as you're aware that when it gets down to discussing options and decision making, those meetings, you guys you're there. Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and no disrespect, I laugh, it's got the library CAO and chair, and meanwhile, we had two CEOs of two large marijuana growing facilities, and it's not even mentioned on the meeting. So two large CEO, one CEO threatened us with lawsuits in an open letter. So I would think it would, in all fairness, that we should be able to know what's going on.
CEO, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this one here are the meetings just for corporate services. So I'm not sure if they were on, if they would have been on the CAO's report, but the CAO is not here. So that's where it would have been listed. But I wasn't part of the meeting, so that's why I don't list it under my report.
Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think where it hurts us the most as councillors is these people like CanTrust and Leviathan are very active on their websites, and they seem to almost have a great PR system. And what happens is the public seems to find it before we do, and then I, as a councillor, get sideswiped when these things happen. And that's really the thing that I guess irritates me, that they're way ahead of the game in terms of what I know, which is, I'm not objecting to what you're doing. All I'm saying is that that's where it gets frustrating as a councillor, is they're so good at their PR work, which I give them a lot of credit for.
Well, I don't know what to say.
That's just my comment.
Yeah,
That's
fine.
just a comment.
I just know that talking to other municipalities, I was concerned about this. Are we doing something wrong here in Pelham? And they said, no, as long as it's a working meeting with the staff and no decisions are made on the direction that the town is taking. They were quite agreeable that we didn't have to inform council of these meetings. There was no decisions made. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, just I'm throwing it out there, just maybe as we move forward, we all are in various committees, commissions, so on and so forth. We all have different roles to play, and we'll have different teams that we'll be working with going forward. So as we move into those roles, we're going to have some information that we'll no doubt want to share with our team here. So perhaps at that time, we can also then kind of kick off our meetings with kind of a overview. Okay, this is what I learned from my last meeting, and then that would be an opportunity for you to do that as well. And if there's meetings that anybody else has had, you know, this is what I learned. I'm on, I don't know, you're on the library board, you're on the airport commission, and you can just kind of give everybody a quick, you know, dedicate maybe 2 minutes, a 2-minute update from everybody. And then that way everybody feels like they're in the loop, everything's been communicated, and everything's on paper. Would that work?
I see. So then, last month, when I had a meeting with the president of Brock University, and it was just laying out the groundwork of what we hope to accomplish as a team, then I should have, that you guys want to know all about those meetings. But you figure that's my job to inform council of a meeting that's still way up in the air. You think that's my job to inform you of that?
Well, I think that you actually did inform
You
us
did.
of that.
Yes, yes, indeed, I did. I informed you when the next meeting is taking place and there's going to be some good consultation taken, then yes, that's when you guys come into play. But as far as me reporting some pie-in-the-sky meeting well, I just think it's a waste of everybody's time. Yes,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the cannabis is such a huge hot-button issue for all of us. We're all getting questions about it all the time. And it just feels that we need more information in a very timely manner, not just when it comes time for us to be given some information to make a decision on. It just feels like we're not getting enough at this point. And I think that was one of the problems with our last council. People weren't getting enough information.
or if you look back on your, on the planners, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, what heading was this under?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the planner reported on the lists of general meetings that she attended, and although she didn't list every applicant name, there is a number of references there about pre-consultation meetings or development coordination meetings that she has with various different applicants, depending on what developments are occurring within the municipality. So, so she doesn't report individually on each applicant name, but she is reporting that these pre-consultations are taking place.
Thank you. Any other questions on the corporate services monthly report? Yes, Councilor.
Getting away from this hot item,
Yep.
one thing I'd request is, since the number of staff have changed, I'd appreciate it if we could obtain through you, Mr. Mayor, an updated organizational chart.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, you'll be getting that with the HR report.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
welcome.
Any other questions on this corporate services monthly report? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Report carries. Okay, now, oh. Oh, wait, where are you?
We're right here.
Oh, okay, capital budget, okay, excellent, sure, excellent. So now, yeah, 4.62, 2019 capital budget presentation and review.
Okay,
Is that it?
yeah,
Oh,
that's me,
and the CAO will be conducting this presentation. Thank
along
you.
with the Director of Public Works.
Along with Jason from Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Jason and I are here tonight to present the 2019 capital budgets. So on the agenda, we're going to talk about the capital budgets that are being carried forward, the proposed capital budgets, reserve and reserve funds, and the open house capital requests. So, so part of the capital budget, it's important to note that, at the end of our fiscal year, which is December 31st, not all the projects that were started in 2018 were completed. So we still have a list of $2.6 million of projects that are ongoing from prior year's approved budgets. So that's just an update to council. In your binders, you have a detail of what the projects are that we have. So, the presentation follows your binders. So the capital summary. So what we have is the total capital requests for 2019 are $6.4 million. And then on the right-hand side, It shows how the funding is happening for those projects. One that I do want to highlight are the roads. So in the roads budget, we have a project that we have submitted, a funding request from OSIF top-up grant. We submitted that request, this is for Pelham Street. We submitted that request last year and we didn't receive the grant. The likelihood of receiving the grant is not very good, because a lot of times these funds go to smaller municipalities that are northern and their income per household is much lower than what Pelham's is. But my philosophy is, if you have a grant, you always apply for it. You never know if there's slippage money, and you never give up an opportunity to apply for a grant. So saying that, when you look at this chart here, you look at the total in-year reserves that have been approved and that have been included, which is $3.2 million. So it looks like the actual request is over by $1 million, which is the grant. We have to show that project on this schedule in order for it to be considered. If we do get approval for that grant, then we would come back to council and we would have to red circle a few of the projects in order for us to be able to fund that. The good news of this project, if we get this grant, is that we have 2 years to actually implement the project. So, you know, it doesn't have to be done this year. We can actually plan to get it done for 2020. So I don't know if there's any questions on that.
On the one sheet, could we just
Yes.
go back to the total capital exceeding cash inflow?
Yeah,
So
okay.
we're short $830,000?
Okay, so, so this, as I mentioned, we have to show the full cost for that project. This is the Pelham Street project.
No, I'm
that we-
talking about the very bottom there.
Yes.
Total capital. Okay.
Yes, we are. So if we receive the grant, then we would have to come back to council and, you know, look at either red circling some projects in order to get the Pelham Street project done, or we can wait and do the Pelham Street project in 2020. There's a 2-year window to do that project.
So, and maybe I'm not making myself clear. The very, very bottom
Yeah, the
total
830.
capital, what's that line? And forgive me, because this is my first year, and I
Yeah, no,
really
no.
want to understand the budget procedure. I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions.
They're not stupid.
Okay.
Every question's important.
And I just want to know each line, so.
Right.
So the very
So,
last line.
The very last line shows that if all the projects, if we received the grant money and we did all the projects that were on the list, we would be short the $830,000. So we wouldn't do that. What we would do are two things. We would come back to council and say, you know, yay, we received the $1 million grant, so now we can get the Pelham Street project done. But what are some of the projects that we need to defer in order to do that? Or we can do the Pelham Street project in the 2020 year because the grant is over a 2-year period. But we just need to show for the grant purposes that it's actually on the list. It has to be on our list even for it to be considered.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, the 1,090,556, is that a shortfall too of in-year reserve transfers?
Yes, it is, yes. But, and it refers back to the grant project.
Okay, and then the negative $300,000, what is that? On the blue line, I'm sorry, it's in bracket, I presume it's negative. The 300,000.
It's the,
In the reserves, on the,
Obligatory
yeah,
reserves?
so that's the, which grant is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be the parkland dedication. So it was just an estimate of the amount of cash inflow we thought we would receive from parkland dedication.
and again, I'm gonna ask, what is that? Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Parkland dedication is an obligatory reserve fund. It is cash in lieu that we receive from developers, rather than them contributing parkland at the time of their subdivision agreement. I would also defer to the Director of Planning if she has any further comments. So I have the understanding of the finance side of it, but not all the details of why we charge the cash in lieu.
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, when new developments are proposed in the town, the Planning Act does require that development contributes to parkland. And so developers can contribute in two ways. They can dedicate land to the town for park purposes, should we need land in that particular area for a park, or they contribute cash in lieu for park. And so if there is development in an area that's already well serviced by parks, then we would take the cash in lieu, and that cash in lieu goes into this reserve. It has to be specifically for parkland, and it has to be specifically reported when we use that money, and it's used to help develop parks and parkland facilities and so forth. So that's what we're estimating in terms of the amount of money that we would be collecting in 2019 for parkland dedication, kind of based on the growth projections that we have for next year.
Thank you. Councilor Corey? Oh, okay. Councilor Chofie?
So that 300,000, that's what's expected to be collected in 2019? Or is that a shortfall in brackets?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the negative numbers at the bottom there, those are cash inflows. So if you see it, so the subtotal shows you the capital spending as a positive number, and then the negative numbers after that are the estimated cash inflows that we'll get for those items. And so then the net at the bottom is the shortfall.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hahn?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so maybe I'm a little slow, but if this is a negative number, how is it based on the fact that we've had so much development and we'll have continued development that we would forecast a negative $300,000?
No, that's a cash, that's the cash coming in.
That's a negative, these numbers.
That's just the
That's,
cash.
okay.
All these other numbers are negative, so that's.
So the net amount is
It
the.
becomes a positive, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, continue.
Okay. The capital projects deferred, so even with all of, we said that we have about $6.4 million of capital requests, we actually deferred almost $4 million of projects. So these projects here came from the staff as important projects. We had to reprioritize all the capital and say, how much work can we actually do based on the funds that we have? And so these projects were moved to 2020. So I just wanted to show you that the actual capital request was over $10 million.
Councilor Corey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Schedule 17, the cemetery, are we allowed to defer $20,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I'm not sure exactly what specific project that was with the cemetery, but I don't think there's anything that is preventing us from deferring any projects that may be on the table.
It's the circulation fans in the mausoleum. So they would just defer to the next year. So if you look at the schedules behind the tab, so tab 17, you'll see the 2019, and then after that, you'll see the multi-year project. So on there, that is the circulation fans. So
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the idea of this slide and the picture we're trying to present to council is the fact that as a town of Pelham, we have needs to build and improve our infrastructure. And we understand that putting a budget forward for consideration that's a realistic approach is something that we need to do as staff. So we've taken a first look at our budget to try to trim down that budget, capital budget for 2019, and push off any projects that we feel that we can move into the future. But just the importance of the slide is that these projects are important projects that are going to need to be undertaken.
And it was just, as the director had mentioned, to show the magnitude of the capital request.
Yeah. But also to show the magnitude of what, of the capital budgets that haven't got done in the last 2 or 3 years, which, would you consider that I thought it was 6.2, I think you said 6.4, probably a serious problem, because what you don't do in 2017, you put off to 28, it ends up being a steamrolling effect. Am I right in saying that?
Well, the deferred maintenance just keeps growing.
Yes, that's what thank you. That's Councilor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want assurance that after Friday's meeting on water safety that we're responsible for, that we're not delaying any water-related projects that affect the drinking water in our area.
Through you again, Mr. Mayor. I'll get into this more when I talk during my presentation.
That's fine.
As a quick overview, one of the things you'll notice is that our water budget actually includes the water main work associated with the Pelham Street North project, the project that was contingent on funding.
Right.
So yes, we take our recommendations and what we receive from our drinking water quality management system very seriously, and if at all possible, it's better to perform that work with the rest of the road reconstruction work at the time that project happens. There are certain cases where, yes, we would look at doing the water main work in advance of that road construction work in order to ensure that we're providing safe and clean drinking water to the residents of Pelham.
So Schedule 11, which everyone has in their binder. So per the request of the mayor, we're going to go line by line on the capital budgets just for the 2019. That's the direction that we received. So the information technology budget, the first one is the annual equipment renewal. So this is a renewal of the computers. There's a schedule that we have that we replace the end-of-life hardware for our computers, and that's a budget of $32,000. The second one is a security awareness software. So this is software that helps with the staff and the educational for phishing tactics that are being deployed, and also it helps us, the town, against cyber attacks. The next one is the identity access management software. So this one here is a system that when you log in, it helps with the security of passwords that are being used. Right now, we have different passwords for different softwares. What this does is that it synchronizes all that, so when you log into your system as staff, you just need the one password and all of the other systems are connected, and this helps with security for the various softwares. The backup generator for IT server room, we currently only have a backup system that's only good for 30 minutes, and that's, if you look at the risk associated with that, it's not very good, considering this is the server room that also supports the Meridian Community Center. So a backup generator is part of the emergency preparedness plan that we have, and it's something that's important to the town in order to mitigate the risk of losing our systems going down.
Through you,
And-
Mr. Mayor. Could we put that on hold and debate that? Do we need it this year? Or could we wait 1 more year, 2 more years for that? Could we defer, like we deferred the other ones, like that $46,000?
If I have to pick one, that would not be the one that I would pick to defer. I mean, that is a real concern. Right now, I mean, to have a server room and not have a backup system, a generator, is serious. Everything that we do, every aspect of everyone's job has some type of technology associated to it. And this is the room that supports all of that. So to say that we would only have 30 minutes if something was to go wrong, and that's all you would have is 30 minutes, or the systems would shut down, that also affects business continuity as well. Most organizations do have backup generators for their IT server rooms. as a risk mitigation.
Now that, it's through you, Mr. Mayor, is that an engine that's gonna, is it a battery, a large battery, an engine? Don't know what type of generator would that be.
Okay, well, normally a backup generator, just,
Usually it's an 8-cylinder motor that's running on top of a facility,
but
and
it's-
once it hydro goes off, the
no,
engine.
it has its own, not, do you want to
Natural
talk about
gas.
it, chief?
Yeah, so it's an engine.
Yes.
Yeah, compressor, okay.
Okay, but it's,
So how does that, where's that gonna be located, at the MCC?
no, it's located in this building here. This is the building.
And then
that's-
it's gonna support the
Yes, it
MCC?
supports the MCC, yes.
And-
The
and-
server
and-
room is here in the town hall.
And how do we get the wires to the MCC? Might be a stupid question.
It's wireless.
Oh, okay. That's a stupid question.
I can answer that question.
I'm sorry. Oh, Councilman.
I can answer most of those questions. What, all the services that we have here, forgive me if I'm stepping way
Oh,
out
no,
of
go
bounds.
ahead. I
All the
appreciate it.
services we have here fire out the internet connection to the MCC and all the other buildings in our facility. Talking about that, I want to highlight here, I really believe this is one area where I believe to spend money in. I believe we need to spend more than we've actually got there. From my background, this is where I've made productivity increases. We've changed the way we do things. I mean, you go to St. Catharines, they control the lights at their soccer field, say at Lancaster Park, from the guy sitting in the office. They don't have a guy having to go out with a truck and do things. They control heat and light and those kind of things. So anytime, my recommendation is anytime we can add internet connectivity, whether we're adding electrical panels, whether we're adding lights, whether we're making changes, I think we need to adapt technology to it. And that's why I'm saying that if I was voting for something, I'd vote for more money in this area and take it from somewhere else. But that's because I know what it does. I've seen what it does. I've seen what it's done in engineering. I've seen what it's done in the plant. It has achieved things that you can't achieve in any other way. So I'd highly recommend it. And I want our IT department involved in every electrical and decision as well. Anything to do with electricity or lights or those kind of things, my recommendation is to get the IT department involved. Because that's how critical this is, to make sure our software is integrated, that we get the productivity that we need, and it helps us all be on the same page.
Thank you, Council.
Okay, and then the last one is this is what ties into Councilman Hildebrand has just said, is the innovation technology. This is $50,000 that we have in the budget ongoing, and this is where new softwares and new, if something comes out throughout the year, where the funds come from. So it's an important component for us to be innovative. Are there any other questions for IT?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the annual equipment, what's the life expectancy of each workstation? Are you doing it every 4 years, every 5 years?
I know some of these computers are quite old. I don't have that exact number. I mean, it's at least 4 years. I know that for sure. I can get back to you.
If I'm looking through the projections year after year after year, it seems like the same amounts plugged in, so obviously you're replacing a certain number every year.
Yeah, oh yes, for
Like,
sure.
What is that number, and, you know, what's the risk if we defer it for a year?
Well, some of the equipment it's on a schedule, on a end-of-life schedule, so you would have some of the equipment that would have reached its end of life. I can ask the IT manager and send an email out to councilors as a follow-up, if you would like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. The next one is Schedule 12, Fire and Bylaw Services. So at the December 17th meeting, council approved the replacement of the radio equipment. That's the big ticket item. And the other item that we have on here is the replacement of the breathing apparatus. I don't know if there's any questions anyone has. Okay, Jason.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna get through a lot of material here. So same approach, we'll go through the budget line by line. Just to give you a little bit of a overview of our facilities, the budget responsible for that. We manage and maintain and operate a number of facilities throughout the town of Pelham, with a replacement value of over $50 million. So we do have, and that does include the new Meridian Center. But we have quite a large contingent of buildings and facilities on our books. The $4.9 million deferred maintenance costs, so that represents money that we haven't spent that we need to start spending. So that's projects that are on the books that we haven't invested the money into yet. And how do we get that number? Well, the maintenance and capital program is basically driven by facility condition assessment, so FCA they call it. And you'll see it on the budget sheets that you'll have FCA critical 2016. Well, in that report, it was recommended that specific element would be addressed in 2016. So you'll see FCA critical 2019 or FCA critical 2018 with some of these projects that are related to our facilities. The facility condition assessments are completed every 5 years. So we have a consultant that does that for us. It's an independent consultant. They come in and do a complete look at all of our facilities. They give each facility a rating, and they identify repair and maintenance components and strategies moving forward for your capital budget. Here, very quickly, listed some of the facilities that we look at, and you'll see these facilities located or showing up on our budget. So the first one is concrete and asphalt repairs. Part of our facilities annual programs that we do. These would take care of any miscellaneous concrete work, asphalt repairs, and parking lots at some of our facilities. The old Pelham Town Hall fixture maintenance. Okay, so this is a project, from what I understand, for it to be a capital project, it has to be $3,500 in value or more. The project here involves replacing and cleaning out and changing LED lights, the lighting systems in the fixtures themselves at the old Pelham Town Hall. So in order to do that, we need to rent equipment, lifts to get up and actually do the work. And this is just a maintenance project that we do every 5 years. And if there's any questions, I think it's probably better if you just ask them as we go. Sure.
Yeah, through the mayor, the light bulbs, are they currently LEDs that are in the fixtures? Or would that be an upgrade to LED?
So I'm fairly new here still, and my managers have been kind enough to come join me tonight, and try not to put them on the spot too much, but I'll defer this question to our manager of facilities, Kim Holland.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they are LED.
Okay, and they need to be changed out in 5 years?
So each bulb has, or they have a life expectancy of 5 years. So in order to avoid the one-off bulb that goes out randomly in the middle of a function and the next thing you know you're scrambling, the recommendation during the installation, the capital project back in 2014, was to put it as a placeholder. So that 3,500, I believe it is,
Yeah.
will cover the light bulb replacement as well as the fixture cleaning and the ceiling fan maintenance and cleaning as well. So you rent a lift for a period of time and do as much as you can. If you're familiar with the facility, the vaulted ceilings are, as you know, quite high. So that's what that's for.
Thank you.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know the LED light bulbs usually have a life expectancy of 10,000 hours, and that would be 2,000 hours per year, and change them out 5 years, and I don't think that old town hall is being used 2,000 hours in 1 year. So do we have to change that every 5 years and base it on what we use? Maybe go every 7 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is probably a project we could look at deferring if need be. Obviously, there's maintenance responsibilities associated with it, and whether it's 5 years or we push it to 7 years, the more projects you keep pushing, just realize that eventually those projects do need to get done, and that's what starts to build up the deferred maintenance end of things.
So through you, just one last, I don't want to spend too much time on 3,500. Kim, the lights right now, they're all functioning and we're okay with them?
Yes, yes, they are.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, go ahead. Go
Okay,
ahead.
great. So one of the things we looked at when we tried to condense this budget as much as we could was, I believe it's important to repair and do maintenance on the building blocks, which are foundations, and try to keep things dry by spending money on your roofs. So these are some issues that have been coming up with respect to our main municipal building as well as our fire halls. FAC 0319, foundation, structural, repair, waterproofing, exterior painting. So this project is doing repairs to the foundation of this building, doing some waterproofing with, it doesn't have a basement, so we're not digging down and installing waterproofing per se, but we are using paints that help to waterproof and protect the foundation of the structure. This was identified as part of our FCA report that was completed in 2014. So last time we've completed this facility condition assessment report was in 2014. So we're due to do another one, and we're planning on including that in the 2020 capital budget next year.
Jason, just a question quickly. When we see these figures of the 55, 45, whatever, are those estimates, and you haven't, are those quotes or staff estimates?
No, so these are neither. These values would come from, a lot of these values would come from the report that the independent consultant does as part of the facility condition assessment, and they'll provide estimates. Next question is probably going to be, are they based on 2014 numbers? Yes, they are. So there's probably a conservative approach with these estimates, but that's where these numbers would come from.
Okay, so from 2014 then?
Right, correct.
Okay, yep, and provided by the consultant that did the work?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Fire station number 1, roof repair. The roof section that we're dealing with here, it says FCA critical 2019 to 2024. However, we're receiving some major issues down there right now. The fire chief actually forwarded emails this morning with puddles on the top of a desk, sitting right beside a computer. That's how bad the roof is leaking in that one area, and it needs to be addressed. So these are, this is a project here that, as you see further down, there's another project repairing a section of the roof here at Town Hall. And that's something that we would look at putting together as one tender package to try to receive the best pricing we can with the quantity of work that we packaged with 2 projects going out as one. So, important project.
Is the chief familiar with the odd pail?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I went and bought 6 more pails today, so.
Thank you very much.
Strategically placed around.
I know when I was talking to you a couple of months ago, you were saying that it was getting pretty critical over there, and I can appreciate
We
that.
have mold in the building now.
Okay.
The walls are so wet inside, so it's escalating.
Okay.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, how fast would it take to get that repaired? Would it be on your, in March, April?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, obviously we'd have to go through the request for quotation, get prices and get quotes on doing the work. This type of work, I think, would be best done in better conditions, weather conditions, obviously. So we would want to get the process going and retain somebody and get them up to speed so that they can take on this work in spring, early summer.
Up through you, Mr. Mayor. Bob, how long, or through you, Mr. Chief, how long has this been leaking? How many years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
You being polite?
Yeah, it's been leaking for a while, and there has been some patchwork done on more than one occasion in the last 5 or 6 years. I think Kim could probably speak to that more detail than I am, because she's in charge of that maintenance part of it. But we have done some patchwork over the last number of years. It's just got to the point now where it's pretty rough.
That's excuse me, that's a flat roof, is it not?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Next project, the FAC 0519, MCC gym floor covering. So this is a budget request to get a suitable cover to cover our gymnasium floors so that we can host different types of events in those gymnasiums without damaging the surface and the polyurethane finish of those hardwood floors. We recently had several events in the facility. One was the 2019 Silver Stick International Tournament, and in which case, at that event, there was, I think, 3,500 people at the facility, a lot of them kids in poor weather, and we actually, this is an event that actually had, always was part of Pelham, but the opening ceremonies were always held in Niagara Falls. So with the new facility, we were able to bring this event back to Pelham, and my son plays on one of the teams, and part of the deal is you go to the opening ceremonies and there's all these kids running in and they all trade these pins. So they've got these lanyards and they run around and they trade pins with all these different teams that come from all over, not only just Canada, but they come from places as far away as San Jose, Los Angeles. Teams were there from southern states.
New Mexico.
Right, New Mexico. And for us to be able to host these types of events or graduations, those types of events, we need to have a protective covering that covers those gymnasium floors. For this event, because we knew we were not going to have the budget to be able to purchase a proper cover, we ended up purchasing what they call ram boards. It's almost like a cardboard type material that we had to, it's very labor intensive to place. We had to place it down, tape it. But from being there that night and witnessing it, without that cover, we would have definitely done damage to those floors. So this is a request that's coming through so that we can keep on continuing to hold those events and increase our rental opportunities with the facility.
Councilman Hildebrand.
I'm surprised that now we're coming to ask for something that should have been included in the building right to begin with. Because I'm sure we thought of the fact that we were going to have all these events and we're planning for that. We spent $36 million plus, and here you're coming to us now and asking us to take care of something that should have been taken care of. Be that as it may, I'm wondering, have you considered checking with the local schools, like the colleges? I know there's a gentleman in town who actually promotes all this kind of stuff, to see whether rental is available.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know we have looked at other opportunities with respect to renting these types of covers. I know Brock, they have that same type of cover for their floors. Niagara College, unfortunately, these facilities and these institutions don't have any interest in renting that flooring out to us. I know we looked at those. We tried to have those get those rentals in place prior to purchasing the board that we did to protect the floor for the Silver Stick tournament.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest possibly this council may have other connections that possibly we don't have in the town at present, and possibly we could make some inquiries and see whether something could be arranged. If we're thinking that rental is an option.
Yes. well, let's keep that thought for a minute. Councilor Stewart.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, do you have any estimate of how many times you would need to have those even just one gymnasium floor covered for an event? And what would the revenue generated from it, how long would it take to offset the cost of buying that flooring?
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a schedule of rates that are coming out as well that are going to lay out what our rental rates are for different types of facilities. In expectation that we would be moving ahead with a covering, we've made an allowance for a rental rate. So when a user group comes in or somebody comes in to rent that space, we are going to make them, if it's required, we will make them put the flooring down as part of their rental package for a fee. So that's also something that we've thought about to try to recoup costs. To the number of events you're asking, I don't have that information handy with me. My manager of facilities may have some more information regarding what commitments we've already made to date and what opportunities we could have.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We have so far for the 2019 calendar year 3 confirmed rentals. We're not accepting anymore. We've had some other inquiries because it's sort of determined by this this capital line item. So we had already committed to a graduation, a local high school graduation. We've committed to a quilt show in 2020, a very large one, and the International Silver Stick is an annual event every December, of course. So at this point, I've instructed staff not to accept any further firm rentals, and we'll follow up on inquiries based on the decision.
Any other questions? I've got a couple, if I could. So the boat show, you could hold that in an arena. Wouldn't you hold a boat show in the arena as opposed to on the gym? I'm just questioning.
It's quilt, not boat. It's a quilt show.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I should have left my hearing aids in. I'm sorry. The other thing then, so I was there on opening night, and it was indeed quite a riot down in the gyms. And that covering that you used, that was a one event covering, and then you took it off and either burned it or whatever. Is that what happened to that covering?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. That covering, it actually held up fairly well for that event, and we were surprised. It's very labor intensive to put down. So the labor to install it and remove it was significant. We're expecting that we would get 2 to 3 uses out of that covering.
Okay, and where do you store that?
It's stored on. It's stored in our storage room,
Oh.
like on site,
Okay.
in rolls. So it tightens up to rolls in about 18-inch diameter, and it's stored on skids in one of our storage rooms.
Okay, excellent. And this covering, is that how you would also do this, or would it roll up and stay at the end of the gym?
This particular style of covering comes on a 12-foot length, and it's like a one-person job. So basically, you roll these the rollers out to the gym, and then it's very user-friendly, and it unrolls and covers the flooring. There's no adhesion. There's nothing like that.
Okay.
And then it's rolled back out to storage.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Well, Councilor Hahn?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so of course it would depend on use. So obviously the more events you have, the more wear and tear. But on average, how long would something like this flooring last? We're talking like 4 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like what are you looking at? Like when would we be doing this again?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that number, but I could guess, but I wouldn't want to do that. It's definitely 10 years plus.
Okay.
Councilor
You,
Paul?
Mr. Mayor, would this product be waterproof?
It is impermeable, yes.
So
Yeah,
if
totally, and it's one piece.
somebody spills a drink or,
Absolutely, yeah, that's the intent behind it.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? No? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Mike?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, would this be something that some of the user groups could contribute to, like Pelham basketball or the pickleball, because we're actually protecting the floor for them as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to be honest with you, it's a cover that's going to be protecting the floor in our best interest, so that we don't have to go back and refinish the floors to provide them. I would think that to develop a user fee for the people that are renting that facility and having them chip in that way to help fund this flooring, rather than going back to the actual basketball user group to say that, you know, they need to chip in to protect their floor. I think it's falls on the town's responsibility to do that.
And one question, when we do rent out for the quilt show, so we rent the whole gym, what would we get for that? They would take it for a day or a weekend, I take it. What would be, hopefully it's more than, well, I don't know, do you tell me, what would we get? What would be the revenue we would get for, let's say, the graduation even, or do you have those figures?
Mr. Mayor, it's, so depending on whether we use, if we go this route with the flooring, we have included this in our 2019 fee guide proposal that will go to council shortly, and you'll see that, and you'll also see the new rates that we're proposing. The fee for this, for example, would be a flat rate of $500. So if you want to use this flooring for your quilt show or your graduation, there's a $500 fee to just put the flooring down for them.
Yes.
In addition to the regular rental costs. So today's rates for rental are very different than what we've proposed to council for 2019. So I think it's probably best to perhaps leave that for discussion when those are proposed to you. I don't know them off the top of my head. Today, for 2018, our rental rates are $20 an hour for one gym, and of course $10 an hour for half of a gym. So if you rent two gyms, the full space is $40 an hour.
Yeah.
But we're proposing different options for 2019.
Okay, you go, very good, thank you. Oh, yes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. All these years, we've had the Pelham Art Show on Mother's Day weekend, and it's been held in the old arena. So why can't, without having to buy this, why can't some of these events be held in one of the rinks when there's no ice in them, rather than buying covering for the gymnasium floor for that event?
You, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the answers in front of me with respect to all the scheduling that has to happen with respect to the rentals. There may be user groups or events that want to have that more intimate area in the gymnasium. In the case of the Silver Stick tournament, we had hockey games going, we had a main show in the main arena, and then we had 2,000 kids running in the gyms and throughout the foyer.
Yep.
So,
but that's a one-off.
That's a one-off. Absolutely, I agree 100%. There's that's a one-off when we're going to have 3,500 people at once in that facility. But right now we're looking at other opportunities for rentals, different events that can happen there. And based on the size of the graduation, you're not going to run that in the exhibitor center. I mean, it's the rentals will be driven by the user groups that want to come in and use that facility. So.
Okay, thank you.
The next project is the Tice Road well replacement. Our only source of potable water at the Tice Road facility is a well. It's collapsed. We are still able to draw potable water out of it, but we're starting to get a lot of infiltration with silts, and we're going through a lot of filters. It's becoming costly. So this is a project to go in to repair the existing well or look at options of putting a new well in for that facility.
Question?
The arches.
Let's go, wait, if I could,
Oh,
if I
sorry.
can, maybe the well thing.
Yeah.
So I realize that your well there is a lot deeper than my well. Your well's there 180, 200 feet. Is that why because I know I can get a well dug on my farm for $3,000. So,
Yeah, our well at Tice Road is about 50 feet.
I'm sorry?
50 feet.
Okay, well then, so that then is what I don't understand, because I had a local well driller offer to do me a well for $3,500. So what are we getting for 30,000? And that was with a pump, and that was wired.
Yeah.
So I find that 30,000 may be something we could work on.
Okay, to be quite honest with you, Mr. Mayor, the estimate for the well, wasn't part of the facility condition assessment, obviously. So this is an estimate that staff have come up with, and without knowing the exact scope of work of what we're gonna do, I heard system behind me, how we're gonna approach that. I think this is a conservative estimate.
And to put some leeway on the situation, if you do, I realize that if you do drill a brand-new well, you have to decommission that one, and that does have a price to it, and I understand that. But maybe it's just something that we could take a look at.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this stage, we know we have an issue there we need to address.
Yes.
So this portion of the budget would be to address that. We don't know the exact route we would take yet in preferred option.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Continuing on with the arches. So this is a budget request to go ahead and do a structural analysis on the arch. There are visible signs of deterioration, and the structural integrity of those arches are coming into question now. This is almost a landmark now for the town of Pelham in the Market Square area. So the first step to doing any type of structural repair or replacement, rehabilitation, would be to find out what the root cause is and what the condition of that structure is. So this $4,000 is specifically just to do an engineering feasibility study and inspection, detailed inspection, and a condition assessment on those arches.
Thank you. Councilor Cole.
So we're gonna spend $4,000, and if the engineer tells us we gotta spend another $150,000, would that make sense? If I'm not mistaken, they were always temporary, okay? And you guys some people in this community made it a permanent, if I'm not mistaken. They're made out of plywood, and I'm not too sure what's in between. I'm just afraid that if we're gonna spend $4,000, then the engineer comes, and I guarantee he's gonna probably say, you're gonna have to reskin them or restructure them. And right now, we don't have the money to do that. And if we have to take them down, so be it. When we do have money, we'll redo them. But to spend $4,000 there, as a temporary, because I know it was the second or third Summerfest that was erected. The first one, we had pyramids made, second one, and John knows it more. I just find that, when people say it's part of history, we tore down a building on Highway 20 that was there for 60, 70 years. But now we're gonna try to save something that was always temporary? That's my thoughts on that, so.
Councilor Hahn?
I have to echo Councilor Kaur. I think that it's paint that's holding them together at this point in time. So have we looked at removal and perhaps looked at other options altogether, like investing in, I don't know, park benches or something where we can hang some nice flowers in the summertime or something? Do we actually need them? First of all, we've even considered that. And second of all, have we looked at another option? Is that something that's been discussed, or is it just a repair?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to answer both the councilors' concerns. Until you know what the issues are, then you can't say for certain what would be repaired, what would have to be completed, whether or not it's safe, whether or not we need to take it down now. As an engineer, professional engineer, and I deal with bridges most of my life, and I've closed down bridges because the condition was not, didn't support vehicle loads, traffic. So O'Reilly's Bridge was one. We closed that down. So this is probably a situation we're facing now is without having an engineer look at it to give us some type of recommendation on what can be done or what should be done, whether it should be taken down. As staff, we might be in a situation where we will need to take them down. If there's an engineer's report that comes forward with a repair strategy or a rehabilitation strategy or a replacement strategy, then that would be that would come to council as a capital project on its own. So council would then have the decision capabilities to say yay or no with respect to that project. So this is again a budget estimate for doing an engineering report. May not be $4,000, but I do believe that we need to have a structural expert take a look at these arches to determine what next steps are available to council to make a decision on.
Okay. Continuing around, Council Husband.
I echo what Councilor Cora was saying. I'm not sure whether you've included the choice to eliminate them, because going down the road, I see another expenditure where you wanted to replace them. So I guess my concern is we're spending $4,000 on something that we may be wrecking. And like he said, we tore down a historical building that had far more significance than the arches, in my view. So that's my opinion on the arches.
Councilman White, Councilor Ray.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, being chair of Summerfest committee for the last number of years, we have discussed the arches. We've discussed of contributing to the repair of the arches to a certain extent. I can't speak for this Summerfest committee, but it may be something that Summerfest committee through their reserves pays for the engineering report.
Okay.
That way we have an idea on what we're dealing with.
So perhaps before we do that, and I don't know if this requires a staff report, I think this council should have a meeting or a discussion at an appropriate meeting as to whether we want to put any money into this, because 4,000 now, and then it's, whether it be 35, 40,000, we could be heading down a road. So I think this council should make a decision whether we want to spend any money or just spend money to remove the arches. But would council agree that we should have that discussion very soon? Okay.
And I also agree that we look at something to replace it further
Yes.
down the road
Yes.
when we have enough money.
Okay. So would we red circle that, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that be red circled until council has made a determination.
Okay, okay, thank you.
The next facilities project, the Fawn Hill Cemetery building, replacing the overhead door. So this has become a safety issue. The door has passed its useful life. Safety mechanisms are not working. This is considered a safety issue, replace that door.
Any questions on this? Nope. Nope.
Okay, the final bullet here is the municipal building. I touched on this earlier. So this is a project. We have one section of roof that is requiring repair. It was noted in the facility condition assessment, and again, this is along the same lines as the Fire Station 1. It's a roof repair that's required to be done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there'd be a possibility of getting two roofs done at the same time, we might get a cheaper price. Just, you know, if they're in town, they do the fire department, and then they come here and they finish up this building. Just
Yes.
instead of getting two separate, would there be a possibility of putting both of them together?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, we would definitely look at taking economies of scale into factor here and including those two projects as one tender call.
So I can remember when I was on council, either 2016 or 2017, we had authorized roof repairs. Maybe, is this, so did we have roof repairs done in 2016 or 17, or was this that? Maybe, maybe you could.
Sure, I had to defer this to.
Mr. Mayor, yes, we did. So there are multiple levels of roofs on this building due to the multiple expansions of the building. So now we're talking about, basically the last two sections are identified on this year's capital. The last remaining section that would need to be done is this new section, which as we know is, you know, it's probably got another 10 years, so it's in the plan, but the other ones were critical. So these are the last two critical sections, and we did do one in 2016.
Okay, thank you. I can't help but think that in a better world, that we would do away with that flat roof and put a
Truss.
an arch roof on it. It's just, like, especially the way that building was built with different levels here and there. It'd be interesting to know what an engineer would come up with on a bill to put a whole new roof on top of the roof, but that isn't gonna happen this year. Okay, thank you.
Schedule 14. So parks and beautification. Some of the things we do: municipal grass cutting, maintenance of storm ponds, the maintenance of the fields, baseball, soccer. We operate a number of playgrounds throughout the town. There's 12 of them. Three trails. One new recent one, the Gary Burko Trail. As well, we look after hanging baskets, flower beds, the maintenance of street furniture, Christmas lights, and also undertake forestry operations. So the capital budget for our parks, one is our tree removal program. So this is a program that's an annual program, and we look at removing diseased trees that are safety concerns. This is a program that's, it's an annual program, and it's required. The next project, Centennial Park electric sign. So there's a sign that's at Centennial Park. This project's $13,000. The current sign is not operational, and it's unable to be repaired. It's got to be replaced. So this $13,000 is to replace the digital portion of that sign. This is a sign that the Fenwick Lions, as well as the town of Pelham, advertise events on in that area, and it hasn't been working for some time now. So this budget request is to replace that digital portion of that sign.
Yes, Councilor Field.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, was that sign not put up by the Fenwick Lions? Or was that our installation of that sign?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to defer this question to our Manager of Recreation, or, sorry, Director of Recreation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That was a partnership with the Fenwick Lions and the Lioness. It was a town sign in which they donated $5,000 towards the sign when it was placed. That's the whole sign. The whole sign is a wooden sign, and the electronic portion of it, it's 10 years old now, and throughout the past couple of years, it's had some hiccups, and we go out and we maintain it, and now it's just, the board is dead. So it's missed by all at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Questions on the sign? Yes, Councilman.
You know, my concern is when we get into these agreements of doing stuff with clubs, I'm not sure whether we have a policy, and maybe you can enlighten me. Do we have a policy of how we handle these things? Because it seems to me as once we do a cooperative thing, we're the ones ending up holding the bag, fixing it, maintaining it, doing all those kind of things.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is municipally owned infrastructure, a piece of infrastructure that we own. And at the time, we were going to be putting up the whole sign on our own, no different than what we do to any other park. And at the time, we approached the Fenwick Lions as they could as well become a partner, and we would be promoting all of their events as well. And it worked out for us. Doesn't always, but they are a good partner, and they were able to help us at the time.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know they're a great partner, but can I ask you another question? Could be a little off the subject. Do the Fenwick Lions, do they own that building on our property, or do we own that building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, their clubhouse
Right.
is a separate piece of property. We do not own it. It actually has right to street. That's their property.
Really?
Yes. And a portion of the parking lot is also theirs.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Other than if I may just say something, of the fact that the service club does so much for the community and so much for Fenwick in particular with their parades, their carnivals, and what have you. I certainly wouldn't want to see this council begrudge the money spent on that sign. Just like I say, the club does so much. I realize all service clubs do so much, and I'm just saying that what they do for us in Fenwick is very appreciated by this council. Thank you.
Moving along, the cenotaphs, maintenance and conservation. So we have 3 cenotaphs throughout the town, and every 2 years we do a maintenance program on those. They're lead letters, and we have to keep maintenance on those cenotaphs once every 2 years to maintain the upkeep on those. So this will be showing up every 2 years as part of the parks and facilities budget.
Is that a local company that does that? Or do you know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know who the company is that did it in the past.
Mr. Mayor, it's actually a company out of Quebec that does it. This is what they specialize in. It's a highly specialized, maintenance is a loose term, but what they do with the lead lettering and the preservation of the monuments is, it does go out for quote, competitive quote, don't get me wrong, but this company from Quebec is the one that's done it the last 2 times.
Excellent. Okay, but we do tender it then?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
PRK 0419. This is a Centennial Diamond number 3, and the budget request is to install enclosures in the dugout areas for players' safety and spectator safety. So just to preface this, I do know that this user group has come to council in the past to request funding for projects such as this one. So this is something that we've been looking at completing to protect the player safety, and that's what is showing up on the budget.
Yeah. Question? Yes, Councilor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the question I have, I've got 10 grandkids, they all play soccer. I'm down at that field all the time. The utilization that I see, obviously I'm not there full time, but I'm there almost every day of the week. I don't see very many ball diamonds being used, other than the first one coming in on the right-hand side. So I'd like to see a utilization before, unless you have those numbers for me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do not have the usage numbers off the top.
So
of
is
my
that
head.
utilization, is that Centennial Park, oh, I see, no, it's Diamond number 3, I'm sorry. So they are the ones out back then, aren't they? Maybe Kim would know that.
Through Mr. Mayor, Centennial Ball Diamond 3, and there's a diamond as well, Hero Black, are clay diamonds. These are hardball diamonds, very heavily used, our most popular diamonds. And they're used, you know, I could guess at about 6 out of 7 days a week, probably.
Okay.
And they're specifically for hardball, so that's why this request has gone in.
Okay, great, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Councilor?
I'll agree with your observation with heavily used for Harold Black Park, because I live around there. They're always there. But my observation isn't the same for Centennial Park. That's just my observation. So I'd appreciate a utilization.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sure. The last project as part of the parks and facilities is the Centennial Park electrical upgrade. So this is, again, Centennial Park, the bunker, electrical bunker that services the concession stands. I believe it services the lights for the playing fields and the parking lot. The circuits are overloaded, and just out of date. Electrical upgrades are required, just posing a health and safety risk, and we're in jeopardy of equipment failure. So this is only a portion. This isn't to complete everything. This is to do the critical work that needs to be done to make the electrical plant safe there.
Any questions? Yes, Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just my comment. As I mentioned before in the IT department, I want to make sure when we're doing these kind of upgrades that the IT department is involved. Because what I'd like to see is the development of technology at that park where we can turn on and off lights, have security cameras, because I know that last year the fields were damaged several times, be instituted in all those parks as part of our plan.
Okay.
Okay.
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can look into all. We'll involve our IT department when we do any type of upgrades like that.
Great, thank you.
First, I apologize for the slide. I planned on making these more interactive. Looking at roads, water, wastewater capital budgets, they're our biggest budget asks. The 20-year capital forecast, kind of what we've tried to do there is break out all the projects with individual colors. I've done this in other municipalities I've been involved with in the past, and it doesn't serve a purpose here, but when you have it blown up and you're able to look at it, you can kind of see where you're planning all your capital works over the next 20 years. It does get busy. Looking at the 2019 capital forecast as well, these are the projects that we're looking at undertaking, whether it's road, bridges, whether it's sanitary sewer upgrade, water main upgrade. So I apologize for the slides as they stand right now, but this is a tool that we'll use going forward to help present to council as well what our capital forecast is and giving a snapshot of what we're planning. So getting right into the roads component, the first project is culvert replacement, bridge replacement. It's the Poth Street Bridge. What I planned on doing when I put this presentation together was hitting the hot items, what I consider to be the hot items and the priority projects that I knew of coming into this position. So I have created some slides, and when I hit those projects, as we go through line by line here, I'll step down in my presentation to those projects. So the first one is Poth. So this is a bridge culvert that has failed. The soils conditions in the area are not the greatest. There's been debate on what type of structure to put back in place, whether or not it be a bridge with pile foundations down to competent soil, whether we replace it with CSP structure that's kind of in place now. So what's happened is the project the lead is through our drainage superintendent. So he's taken the lead, and we're working through the Municipal Drainage Act to replace these culverts. The existing culverts will be replaced with three 3-meter diameter culverts. And that's to allow to maintain the hydraulic capacity. It is on a municipal drain, so we're required to meet certain hydraulic capacities with respect to the replacement of those structures. The project budget, as it stands now, we've retained Spreet Engineering. They're a firm that does a lot of drainage work for the town of Pelham, and when I was with the town of Fort Erie as well, they did a lot of work for us there. They know what they're doing. And the project budget to replace this culvert bridge is $400,000. So is there any questions on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, did we do any further damage with that structure because we waited so long, about what, 1.5 to 2 years Like, did the water wash more things away?
Well, the structure as it is not gonna get repaired, it's getting replaced. So we're taking it out and putting it in brand new. So, with CSP culverts, the lifespan of those, 30, 40 years. But you can see in the lower picture, you can see, it doesn't show too well on the presentation, but due to erosion and activity along the bottom of that culvert, it's rotted the culvert right out. And so this is a very cost-effective method of reopening that road to traffic. It has been closed since 2016.
Do it. Yep, that's okay.
Okay. So obviously you're new here. This is, I can look around at some of the other people, and this has been, well, whatever, 2 years, whatever it is. Been through a lot of engineering designs. Myself, when it first went down, and I still don't understand why we do not do an RFP on these culverts and let the contractors come in, do their own engineering. They go on a provincial website. They can see all the provincial standards, and then they do their own engineering in-house, and they come back to us with proposals. I just can't get my head around the fact, especially, we spent, what, $54,000 on someone to tell us to put piers in. And then we had Street come in and more or less tell us that these guys didn't know what they were talking about. So now we have Street here. And now we're putting 3 culverts in a stream that has two culverts upstream and downstream. So when you say hydraulic, I guess you're talking water capacity?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so you've got upstream, you got 2 culverts, downstream, you got 2 culverts, and now these guys are saying at this particular location, for whatever reason, we need 3 culverts. Frustrating, as it was out. And like I say, when I have area contractors come to me and tell me, Marv, we could do this for $250,000 and we'll take all the responsibility on the project. I really think we've got to, and I'm going to be saying the same thing on Sulphur Spring. We've got to be just putting out RFPs and letting local construction companies do their design work. They have to do, especially Sulphur Springs, they have to meet with NPCA, hopefully Trout Unlimited. They have to meet with everybody, and then they come back to us, and there's a proposal. And we don't have to go to these engineering firms and paying exorbitant fees, whatever. I just don't understand why we as a town do not believe in RFPs when it comes to replacements. We're not engineering these, we're replacing. The engineering was done when that drain was put in, 19, whatever it was. That's when the engineering is done. All of a sudden, the culvert rots out, it's a replacement. You shouldn't have to go in with another engineering report. That's what I've been told. And I'm sorry I'm flagging down.
That's
on you
fine.
guys.
With all due respect, Mr. Mayor, these projects are designed by professional engineers, site-specific projects. So the drain was designed. It doesn't mean that we can go in and put a bridge in without it being certified by a professional engineer. Spreed is a very well-known engineering firm. They do a lot of work on municipal drains. And I'm very confident in their abilities to be able to do this, this project. I am aware of the issues and the discussions that happened in the past. I can tell you for certain that the soils in this area are very poor. I was the engineer that was working on the file for the region on Effingham Road around the corner. And I know the challenges behind doing a design and putting in a proper bridge here. It is very expensive, and this approach is, I think, a reasonable approach to replacing what was existing and opening that road back up to traffic. To do, I think what you're referring to is a design-build project, which is great. Design-build projects do work as well. Usually, for a project of smaller magnitude, they don't work that great. You got to have, for design-build projects, it's better to have a larger project where there's more ingenuity involved and the contractor can undertake their competitive advantages to come up with different designs and work through it. This is basically a culvert replacement. So to do a design build on this, I mean, it's one way you could do that. I think the most efficient way of approaching this project is a conventional design, bid, build.
But so you're saying that this 400,000, it hasn't been tendered?
This has not been tendered.
Okay, so it will go out on tender,
This definitely,
using their designs?
yeah, so Spreet is the engineering firm, so they're about 95% complete. It is being managed through the municipal drainage department, so they are looking at it. It's being funded from the engineering budget. So I have looked at the plans, but I haven't been involved with the engineering behind the project itself. So what will happen is, based on council's decision to move forward with this project, then we will complete the design, put a tender package together, and this project would be tendered publicly, and any company that's capable of doing this type of work is free to submit a bid on it for the public process.
Okay, thank you for that. Like I say, when I have contractors coming up to me, guys who have done this for their living, and telling me that they could be doing this for $250,000 at 2 culverts, which is what the project had, and now all of a sudden, I don't know where this extra water is coming between Balfour and another street that we have to have another size culvert. Whatever, I'm not gonna argue. I appreciate what you're doing.
But through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I haven't done the calculations, and I probably wouldn't know how to do the calculations with the hydraulic capacity, but I know that this engineering firm is an experienced engineering firm that deals with municipal drains all the time. And if it was, I do know that in doing many bridge projects in my past over different water courses, that you need to make sure that you're maintaining the hydraulic capacities that are in place. And from my understanding, this firm, and working with them in the past, they would not have put in 3 culverts if they didn't think they needed to meet the hydraulic capacity of the drain.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you. Excuse me for a minute there, Jason, please. So we have reached the magic hour of 10 o'clock, and we always operate on a curfew. So we have to pass a motion lifting this curfew. So I need a mover.
You need a mover, and
Yeah.
so you would determine if you want to conclude the matters on the agenda or until a set time, whichever occurs first.
Okay. So I should put this to the council first.
Yes, so just maybe if you could read the motion and ask for a mover.
Okay. So the motion is that the rules of procedure as contained in the Town of Pelham procedural bylaw be suspended, and that the specified meeting curfew time of 10 p.m. be and is hereby waived, and that the remainder of the business listed on the agenda for this meeting continue to be considered until, and here's your options, council, all matters have been concluded, or until a set time of whatever PM, which occurs first. So before Jason, seeing as how long it's taken so far, would you like to do an estimate on what's left of your presentation? I guess that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, through you, Mr. Mayor, the way this is proceeding now, I think I'd be up here for 3-4 hours.
Thank you.
Or days.
So council, do we just want to go to, the option is we could go to 10:30 and then hold another meeting. Is that what we could do?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you could set a time to conclude this meeting, and then you could recess the meeting and reconvene at a later time. The meeting then would stand in recess. You would reconvene back at the same place.
Okay.
Time.
So I'm just putting this out here, so do you want to go till 10:30 and then cancel or recess the meeting? What's the feeling of council on this?
Recess.
You okay with recess?
Yeah.
Bob? Councilor Week?
I'm fine either way, I can stay.
Okay,
Yeah, I can stay.
okay, well, I've been in enough meetings already today, so let's go to 10:30 then, if everybody's agreeable to that, and then we'll recess. So, now I need a mover on this. Thanks, Councillor Hildebrand. And put my glasses on so I can read this. Okay, so then we will continue this meeting until 10:30. And then we will recess to be reconvened at a later date. All those in favor of this motion? And all those opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Yes, sir, Jason, it's your floor.
Easy one. Concrete repair and replacement program. This is an annual program that we do throughout the town every year, and it's for basically repairing deficient sidewalks throughout the town. And this is an annual program. As well as the culvert replacement program, $60,000. This is an annual program where we repair or replace culverts anywhere up to 3 meters in diameter, so 1 to 3 meter range.
Do you, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Oh.
How many miles would that 60,000, or how many miles or
So
Culverts.
Culverts, we usually, with 60,000, we saw the tender there earlier, it was in the range of $20,000 for one of them. It depends on the size and what it is, but we try to get 3 or 4 culverts replaced. They're larger size culverts that we try to work on, 1 meter to 3 meter type range. So we tried to get at least 3 or 4 done underneath that program a year.
So Jason, considering we do have a public works, guys at Tice Road and backhoes and stuff, we don't replace these culverts ourselves? I think we do the driveway culverts.
We do. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have our own crews that can repair and replace culverts, road crossing culverts. This program would be more geared towards some of those larger culverts that the contractors with some of the bigger equipment need to be able to do those installations.
Okay, thank you.
Next project is an engineering project. So $20,000, I think last year we had $30,000 in the budget. What it is for third-party consulting to assist in any traffic studies. I know it's come up and we're looking into now some review of some of our pedestrian crossings and traffic signals, safety reviews on sections of road. So that's what this program is, to hire those independent consultants to do those independent studies for us and give recommendations. The next project, RD 0519, the Steve Bauer Trail paving. So we are in receipt of funding through
through you, Mr. Mayor, the Ontario Municipal Cycling Commuter Program, OMCC.
So this is funding that we received to do a capital expenditure on something to promote active transportation. So working with our active transportation group, we ended up, and the transportation, active transportation master plan, they identified 4 projects to submit as part of this grant for funding. So this is a project that staff have picked. I think the caveat of it is that you need to spend, the town needs to contribute at least 20% of the overall costs. And our budget is, what the grant funding that we received is $75,000. So this project would be to pave the Steve Bauer Trail from Port Robinson Road down to the town line on Line Avenue, just past Timber Creek. And then it continues on as the Wellands Trail. There are also other projects that were included with that grant that aren't indicated on the budget, but could also be an option.
Yes.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So as far as this grant goes, what's our time frame on using that money? So in other words, to get the 100, we have to spend 25, but how much time do we have to actually do this? Does it have to be done this year? Or is that, do we have some wiggle room?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer this question to Charlotte.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I can just have a few minutes, I will look into it and then I'll get back to you just a
Thank
few
you.
minutes.
Yes, Counselor?
I'm an active user of this trail, and I think that, personally, I think it's great the way it is. My main concern by paving a trail like this is, A, we spend a lot of money on it, but B, the thing we don't include is the maintenance. Because you pave a trail like this, and then all of a sudden, I could be wrong, and you may correct me. My interpretation is, once you pave it, we take more responsibility for it. We have to maintain the paving, we have to continue on down the line. So you said there was other alternatives for using this funding other than paving, so maybe we should investigate those other alternatives more.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor's correct. Once you hard surface the trail, then as in accordance with the minimum maintenance standards as set out in the Municipal Act, we would be responsible for maintaining not only the condition of the asphalt, but we'd also be responsible for winter maintenance as well on that section of trail. So this is a project we have funding on. There are other projects that were considered as part of this grant. One of them would be to supply signage to identify active transportation and cycling routes throughout the town. I don't know what that looks like, but that's a project that we could work on in lieu of the paving of the trail. The other project was to pave the spur line trail from Hurricane Road to the Thorold Town line. And the final project was to do improvements to Cambro Road to facilitate cycling facilities on that road. Now, the issue with that is you're into full road reconstruction and widening of that road platform to be able to support those. So those are the 4 projects that were put forward as part of this grant.
So you're saying if we pave the trail, then we have to do winter maintenance?
As part of the minimum maintenance standards, we would have a duty to keep that in good repair. The trail, yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
I know, it's kind of a catch-22, especially if you gotta start doing maintenance down the road. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know with people who are avid runners, of which I am not, they like to run on chip trails because it's a lot easier on your knees, on your body to run on chip trail than it is on pavement. So if we're looking at this as kind of a multi-use trail, is it a possibility, and not saying that I want to go with the paving at all, but is it a possibility that you can do kind of a half and half, so that it's like there's some paved and there's some trip, so that way you kind of serving 2 users?
That's a possibility. I wouldn't recommend it.
No?
When you pave, if you're going to end up paving half of it, then you're going to be topping up the other half with stone. You don't want to have a trip hazard. Over time, you probably would develop the trip hazard. Construction of that trail and paving that length of trail was 1.5 kilometers. If you reduce it to half the width of the trail, you're probably doing it by hand, which is going to increase your cost significantly to do that work. My recommendation on this would be to also look into the signage project.
Yeah.
And the idea is to come up with a plan and try to use that funding that's available to us and move a project forward.
Yeah, I think, what's council think of that?
It's good.
Yeah, go ahead, council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe it's just coincidence. I know sometimes, for instance, on Effingham Hill, it's could be coincidental that it often gets repaved and it gets in ship shape prior to the big race that happens there. So I'm just wondering, is it possible to use some of these funds, so for areas that would be used for cycling races and such, but at the same time also get areas that we might need paved? Follow me?
I do follow you.
Just trying to be creative here.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. From what I understand is when we submitted the grant and the application, we identified 4 projects. So there may be an opportunity to look at other projects that could be funded as part of that grant, but as of right now, we are restricted to those 4 projects that were submitted as part of this grant.
I guess the reason, I'm thinking now we got the MCC, so people can walk there in the wintertime. At the same time, if you pave the trail, it makes it accessible. I don't know if people on wheelchairs can even begin to go down these trails if they're just stoned. No. So, I mean, you do gain that advantage. I don't know, it's up to council. Like I say, I hate doing something that then 5 years down the road, then we gotta start doing it all over again.
She's looking into the answer too, so we
I'm
know.
sorry?
We'll know as well. Charlotte's looking into the
Oh,
answer.
yes,
So we'll
that's
know
right.
what the timeframe
Yeah.
perhaps as well,
Yeah.
how quickly we have to do this.
Anyway, any other, oh, I'm sorry, we have an answer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the project has to be complete by December 30th, 2020. So there is one more year, but we are already in receipt of the funds. So just so that council is aware, we have those funds in our account. So we do need to report to them and tell them what project we're doing with it. So we are just trying to designate that project and be able to report to them what we're planning.
So maybe, I'm thinking then, and council, whether you agree, so Jason, we'll leave that with you, and maybe, maybe come back with the signage proposal, and I don't know, unless somebody on council has a better idea.
That's a good idea.
I think we need to think about it.
Okay, we'll do it that way?
Yep.
Okay, let's leave that then, and Jason, we'll leave it with you to come up with the sign proposal.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving along. RDO 619 Pavement Condition Index Study. So this is to perform a full road network, hard surface road network condition index for our roads. So similar to the FCA I was talking about earlier, this is you get a PCI. So it's important because to get the information, this information will feed into our asset management plan and policy when that comes into effect. And so this is something I think is very important so that you get an updated condition assessment on all your hard surface roads. And that'll allow you, from an arm's length perspective, it gives you a good idea on what the condition of your network is and where you should be spending your money with road resurfacing projects and pothole repairs, patching work. And it also will feed into our asset management plan when that gets up and running. So it's as far as I'm concerned, it's money well spent to do that work, that engineering study, and get a condition assessment on your roads.
So, Jason, I see somewhere in this report, doesn't matter where, that we spend, it's either 10 or 20,000 a year on culvert assessment. So is there any way that we could, if we adopt this for the roads, it seems to me that instead of every 2 years having to spend another 20,000 to assess culverts, that once you assess a culvert, you should be able to attach a lifespan to it. So wouldn't you be able to then, if you had this thing on your road and you put all your culverts in there and you say, okay, this culvert at the corner of such and such, it's good for 5 years, the other one is good. I'm sort of wondering why we have to do our culvert assessment I believe it's every 2 or 3 years. Am I wrong?
Every 2 years, we're legislated to do an inspection and condition survey on all your bridges and major culverts.
Yeah.
And culverts over 3 meters.
Yeah.
So you're legislated to do that.
Really?
And it's called the biannual bridge inspection, and it's done every 2 years.
What happens if we don't have any culverts all of a sudden?
Fill in some ditches.
Okay, thank you for that, Jason. Oh, so I'm sorry, was there any questions on this program? Okay, excellent.
Okay. Road base and surface repair program. This is an annual program we have, so going out and doing miscellaneous milling, patching of areas, just basically doing surface repairs to roads. I'll jump down, RD 1219, road rehabilitation, so this is $400,000, so this is your resurfacing program. So under this program, we do surface treatment, hot mix paving. The program RD 0719 is contractors going out and doing patching on the road. So it's not full resurfacing of the full width of the road, it's more spot repairs. So,
To you, Mr. Jason, is that where they scratch the road and then they put a surface, or that's just a patch?
yeah, so, in both cases, in both scenarios, if it's a patching contract, you've probably seen them around town in the fall, late fall here, they have a small milling machine, they come up, they mill out the surface course of the top asphalt and patch it back in. With the road resurfacing program, you could have hot mix asphalt reinstatement or surface treated reinstatement. We have both in the town of Pelham. With hot mix asphalt, you would have the milling machine that would peel off that top layer and then you'd repave that. Surface treatment is usually a process where you go through, depending on what the condition is, you can do surface treatment over existing surface treated roads, but the normal process is to go in and pulverize it or reprocess that road and then put a new tar and chip surface on it. So that's when I refer to surface treatment, it's a tar and chip road, which is usually found in rural areas and semi-urban areas.
Yes, Council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I look at, and it sort of bothers me, is and I think there has to be a better method. You know, it's probably responding to residents' concern about a pothole outside their house, and you're going out, and the boys have on the back of the truck, they got some asphalt, and they're throwing some asphalt in the puddle and driving over it.
Right.
Now, I understand what they're doing, but is there a better way of handling that concern or handling that? Maybe Ryan can answer that question, because I just look at that and I'm sure that stuff doesn't stay in the pothole.
Yep. Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I can have Ryan comment, but again, fixing potholes, that's part of the minimum maintenance standards that we're trying to meet. So there's specifications on the size of pothole, the depth, and the amount of time you have to react to that. So especially weather like this, when we have the deep freeze and then the thaw, your roads start to disintegrate. And I know one of the roads that's going to be on everybody's mind probably is Welland Avenue or Welland Road. It's terrible. So the other thing I like to point out in this is we annually we have this patching program, okay, where we do spot repairs, and then we have a resurfacing program. And we're really limited with the funds that we have here and the work we can do. We've identified under the road rehabilitation, the resurfacing program, we've identified some roads there, but those are moving targets as well. We will prioritize. And this is where that pavement investigation comes in to play as well. Because if we know a full condition assessment and we can then prioritize our resurfacing needs and our patching needs. So, so Welland Avenue is after this winter is going to be in very poor shape. And we're going to look at including that as part of one of our resurfacing programs for next year.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so through 2020 as opposed to 2019?
I think it's got to be addressed in 2019.
I agree, because it's the worst street that we have in town.
No, I thought, excuse me, Jason, I thought that the one reason it took so long to get this done, that there was some infrastructure under there that had to be placed, but we're good with that?
So there's a section of sanitary sewer that connects runs from the end of Hay Street down Welland Road and then cuts through two homes into Deer Park before it catches a trunk sewer down Spruce Side out to Pelham Road. So it's that short section between Hay Street and Deer Park, which is currently undersized. Now, that sanitary sewer does take the discharge from a lot of the development, even up in Lookout area, and all the way down Hay Street. We do have, you'll see, probably not today, but in my presentation, I'll kind of walk you through some of the wastewater models that we had. So when we were looking at developments that were may be coming online along Hay Street, we ran the model and we were able to show that we were able to actually support that development without upsizing that pipe. So does that section of sewer have to be upgraded? Absolutely. Does it have to be upgraded in the next 5 years? That's the question. And that road will need to be treated next year because it's going to be falling apart. So we'll have to address the resurfacing and then look at pushing that sanitary sewer replacement off as far as we can in the future without the worst thing you can do is go in and pave a road and then rip it up the next year.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
And our asset management plan and policy, when we start getting that in place and get condition assessments, we're going to use that information to make good informed decisions on prioritizing projects and when they should happen.
So because of, there is no new construction as coming down Haystone Avenue, so if that pipe is carrying it now, we should be good for 5 years. You're just worried about collapsing or whatever, but as far as carrying capacity, it should be good?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the condition of it collapsing. I'm more worried about its capacity.
Okay.
We ran it for the Hay Street property, and in that scenario that we ran it in, we were able to support that development with the pipe being at that size.
Okay, great. So then theoretically, like you say, then we can resurface that and we should be good for everything being equal. We should be able to get 5 years before we have to do something to that pipe then? That sounds like what you're talking?
That's right. My recommendation would be to resurface the road now and defer that, the replacement of that sanitary sewer into the forecast.
So would you take then some of these roads that you have the, was it 400,000? I know, yeah, but no, what is it? So anyway, would you take some of the roads that you've already identified as going to be resurfaced, would you take one of them off and move Welland Road to that spot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Yeah.
We would have, this is a list that was developed as a needs list, but working with a fixed budget and a dollar value, then we would have to look at reprioritizing those roads and coming up with a list.
Yeah, well, like you say, that Welland Road is, I don't know how many cars a day go down there, but if we fix that, there'd be a lot of people notice it, that's for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? No? Okay.
Okay. The next project is the
Tackle this one.
Pelham Street North project. So this is the project that was discussed earlier with respect to the funding. We are receiving several concerns from residents on the street with respect to safety, speeding, drainage issues. You can see here the bottom picture is the carriage house after a storm event. There is no roadside drainage, so they are experiencing a number of flooding. Basically, the limits are from Burton Street to Short Hills Place, and then there's a storm sewer that runs down Short Hills and outlets to a pond, a stormwater pond. So the project here is basically to take the work from Burton Place, where it's been urbanized, and then urbanize the rest of Pelham Street North, heading north up to Short Hills, and then it would be a trench reinstatement on Short Hills. At this point in time, it would be a trench reinstatement to reinstate where we install the new storm sewer. So some of the issues surrounding it, we are experiencing some high speeds in this area. This project is designed, so this is shovel ready. This is ready to go. The design's complete. So this project would involve urbanizing it. It would involve new sidewalks. It would involve new storm sewer, and it would involve some ways to try to mitigate traffic speeding by traffic calming measures. This project actually uses road guiding, they call it, where they bring the road in and narrow it in certain parts. So the existing platform, I think, is about 8.5 meters, and there will be certain areas throughout the length of that project where we bring the road actually down to 7 meters inside the curbs, and the curbs just kind of come into the road and back out. So it's a way that visually, when you're driving it, it slows traffic down. It has been proven to work. Again, this project was designed before I got here, but that's the plan that's in place now to slow traffic down on this section of road. Obviously, it's going to depend on the funding that's required. It's a $2.4 million job. The question was brought up earlier with respect to our holding off on water main work that's required and is essential and has been flagged as part of our infrastructure review for our drinking water quality management system. So when we go to the water budget, there's a separate, I pulled out the water portion of this project so that if this Pelham Street North reconstruction doesn't go this year, we're gonna do the water main and get that done ahead of time.
So it's obviously something you would prefer to do the whole works.
You always, through you, Mr. Mayor, you always want to do everything at the same time. It avoids the public perception that you're doing a project and then ripping it back up. I mean, to install a water main, because there's a need for that, when you put the water main in, you're reinstating a fairly neat trench, and you're making it safe until you can do the road reconstruction work. It's not a lot of, that situation looks a lot better than going in and redoing the road and then realizing you have to come in and do the water main and cut a trench through your new road, right? So there are, you'd want to try to coordinate those projects the best you can, but obviously there's certain situations with respect to budget approvals that we need to do the water main ahead of time.
Great.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so, Jason, I understand when you bring in the curbs and narrow the road, it will slow down traffic where there's oncoming in, like, there's two cars coming towards each other. But I don't see how that's gonna slow down if there's no car coming towards me that I still can do well above 50 clicks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is one method to try to control traffic speeds. I'm not an expert in traffic calming measures, but I do know that the designer has designed this feature into this project. I know it's been used on other projects. I don't know what projects those are and how successful they were, but I know it's been a proven method of calming traffic. One of the ideas is you can put a three-way stop in here, and you have those same concerns when you put a stop sign in, is that people will come up to the stop sign, slow down, and then they'll accelerate through, and it causes other issues as well. So it's I mean, it's a method that's used to try to control traffic speeds.
So may I make a suggestion, if this project doesn't go through, that we do look at least a three-way stop at Hurricane and South Pelham to slow down traffic, and it's not gonna cost us a heck of a lot of money. Because when I was campaigning, I had all sorts of complaints about traffic on that, speed on that street.
One of the thoughts, this shows Hurricane, I believe it's Hurricane in Pelham. The community mailboxes are right there, so again, putting a three-way stop there would maybe cause some issues there. I don't know, I'd have to take a look at that, but that's one thing that came to my mind, was that the community mailboxes are right there on the side of the road, and to have in the middle of an intersection, so.
Can we go to Canada Post and see if that can be moved?
That would be an option.
Shouldn't be in an interest.
Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it doesn't appear that a community mailbox should be at an intersection anyway, because you're gonna have people pulling up there to park to get their mail.
Okay, we have reached the magic time of 10:30. Jason, thank you for your patience and with your presentation. And council, I think, yeah, we asked some good questions, and we know what the budget process entails. So we will now entertain a motion put forward by Councilman Hildebrand that the Committee of the Whole meeting of February 4th, 2019 stand in recess to be reconvened upon notice from the clerk. All those in favor? All those opposed? This meeting is recessed. And should I bang?
You can't.